As someone who 100% Silksong but would never even consider Steel Soul mode, I believe Silksong's difficulty is well tuned. I also believe it's a bit unfair. Let's unpack that.
Particular mushroom.
This video contains late game spoilers, but we will minimize as much as we can. No major plot point spoilers. When I finally finished Silksong, my main emotion was relief. A bit strange for a game that consumed so much of my time in the past 2 weeks. Why would I have played so much if it was twisting up so much tension within me? Well, I think the main reason is that I really didn't like the final boss fight. There was a prevailing theme throughout my playthrough, and that was, if I wasn't stuck, I was having an excellent time running, jumping, smacking bugs, searching for secret rooms, and hunting down every single fox foe wall I could. If I was stuck, I wanted to rip my spores out. Silksong is one of those rare games that allows itself to be difficult. As a gamer garnering more and more experience day by day, novelty doesn't carry games as often as it used to, and I find myself a tinge disappointed by easy games, even ones bursting with creativity. At the same time, I am easily frustrated by getting stuck on the same obstacle over and over. In those moments when Silksong struck me down again and again, I actually had to remind myself, this is the difficulty you've been waiting for. So for my sake, and hopefully yours, let's table a quick discussion on what's going on here. So why does a game need to be difficult? Well, first of all, it doesn't. But nearly every game I've played where you have a set of moves, which you need to use correctly to not die, or some sort of fail state, each of those games has an oscillating difficulty. The new Super Mario Bros. Castles are staunchly more difficult than the surrounding levels, often featuring insta-death lava and a boss battle. And even notoriously easy games like Kirby's Epic Yarn have a noticeable uptick in challenge as you approach the game's conclusion. Firstly, difficulty is for theatrics. As human beings, we are storytellers, and games with good stories tend to stick out in our mind more. Moss Grotto is a perfect first location in Silksong. The primary descriptor is moss, a soft, fluffy plant that is cushioned enough to sleep on while out camping in the wilderness. True story. It makes sense that an area named after a harmless, dampening plant would be easy. But when you first step into a place called Sinner's Road, I think you will expect something unpleasant. And indeed, the worst debuff and the most annoying common enemy in the game are here. There are indeed elements of Sinner's Road that will have you despising life, but also, the people stuck in the game would probably feel the same way. All's expected when Kroll and Benjen mull on their poor social standing, but I perked up when they start waxing poetic about roach meat. Like, really? You like this stuff? Poor souls. It's a fun moment, but with zero weight unless Sinner's Road is actually terrifying. So then, a second reason why games are difficult is to utilize game mechanics. Chekhov's gun is a useful literary device, but it's also good to mind in games as well. Mario has a jump, so you better use that jump. Silksong has many collectibles that all add to your arsenal of attacks. Silk, skills, tools, crests, the options and combinations are plentiful. But generally speaking, in these games I tend to settle into a comfortable playstyle and stick with that for the rest of the game. Unless, of course, I have a reason to switch up. That's right, difficulty. The crest system in Silksong is probably the single biggest change up to your moveset. While each crest has the same moves, the form has different strengths and weaknesses. For example, most attacks in the game are a simple slash, but the Architect crest turns your slash into a drill. It's neat, but clunky and narrow. I'm not sure I would have ever used this crest, except for the fact that it drops a skill slot in favor of 3 red tool slots. I was struggling on a few bosses that didn't give me room to breathe, and since I needed all the silk I could for heals, I wasn't losing anything by not having a skill. Instead, I loaded up on tools that minimized aiming and just erratically unloaded in the final phase to barely eke by. In retrospect, it was one of my favorite moments in Silksong, but only occurred because some bosses were bashing my mask in. The difficulty encouraged me to consistently try out new abilities. I tried out most of the unlockables at least once, to maybe crack a new moveset that better suits either my playstyle or the playstyle encouraged by a difficult segment. And here's where good and bad collide. Because as easy as it is to change playstyles, try a new toolkit, and exploit a particular weakness, that doesn't mean it will happen. I must have tried dozens of loadouts before finally settling on an architect build I was happy with. But even worse, in that moment of quagmire, frustrated as heck, I wasn't sure I would ever figure it out. The key struggle when difficult games allow free reign to load out and approach however you like is there's nothing telling you what you're doing wrong and what to improve. The Magma Bell is a perfect example. The Magma Bell cuts down fire damage to 1 mask, making it exceptionally useful for the notorious Last Judge and other fire-based dangers. But there are some issues. First, you have to recognize that the Magma Bell will be useful in this scenario, which isn't too obtuse, but not a given either. There's no pop-up that says, hey, you should be using the Magma Bell, and I'm pretty sure I forgot to use it myself. But what's worse, you have to actually have the Magma Bell in order to use it. So maybe you don't have it yet. Maybe you can't purchase it because you don't have any craft metal. Or perhaps the most unlucky of all, you don't even know the Magma Bell exists yet. Bile water. Okay, everyone who knows bile water knows why I'm bringing it up. The whole area is awful. The 3-hour walk back, a boss fight within an arena fight, and the worst debuff in the game. Even finding the hidden bench and the secret silk right before the arena to cancel the debuff couldn't save this place. But you know what could have? Coming back later. You see, I was convinced that this path was mandatory to reach the next part of the game, and so I was weaker than I could have been if I just waited for the game to direct me there. Because this is the thing, once I had every single upgrade in the game, I was able to breeze through the world with a whimsical carelessness. The final boss trounced me when first facing it, but with everything unlocked it took just a couple half-effort attempts. And because winding paths and optional secrets are loaded throughout Farloom, the dev's clear answer to getting stuck on a boss is go explore. And that works. All the terrible runbacks I encountered in the game have a shortcut or alternate path, if you can find it. But that's the problem. If. There are 2 main issues with the philosophy, go explore. The first one is that I went for bile water because I wrongly assumed that I needed a hint or quest to complete the mist. I never found that hint or quest, and so by the time I figured it out, I was so upgraded that the boss was barely a threat. It's a cool puzzle and I'm glad I figured it out on my own, but bile water is clearly more difficult. Go explore can wind you up in a place you're over or under leveled for. Plus, you have to actually have a place to explore. How do you know you found everything in the deep docks? You don't. Or even worse, what if you have explored everything and still can't beat the boss? Which leads into the second issue. At the beginning of the game, you don't have a lot of options. You don't have the architect crest, you hardly have any tools or health at all. While this issue can occur late game, it is especially true that if you are stuck on a boss early game, you might have no other option than to get good. And even if you do have options, you might not know you have options. It's clear the devs put those many options and alternate paths to alleviate the frustration of getting stuck. I'm glad the game is difficult. I'm glad I had so many tools available to try out new playstyles and allow the difficulty to really flesh out my experience. But no matter what correctional measures there are, there's always a possibility that you can't beat the challenge. It's awful. The enemies in Biowater are so obnoxious that I never want to complete that area again. I seriously wanted to quit. And wanting to quit is valid. You have to decide, do I put the game down and give up, or do I grind out this struggle that I deeply despise? Those are unfair choices. I don't want to choose between being a quitter or feeling bitter and awful until I somehow magically manage to get better at a game. The worst part of the latter option is you don't know how long it will take you to get good. Could be 5 minutes or 5 hours. But that's kind of the cost of difficult games, isn't it? The procedural generation in a roguelike could just be bad, or you could get unlucky. Whoops, you're dead. Back to the start. Sure, Spirit Ashes in Elden Ring can make a boss way easier, but it's far from a guaranteed win. Heck, even with the bubble in New Super Mario Bros., someone has to make it through the platforming section. If you think all games should have accessibility options, I'm not here to argue for or against that one. But any game with difficulty has a chance to wall you off. And from my perspective, having beaten Silksong, those temporary moments of frustration were worth all the triumphant victories and fun playstyles I experienced. Except Bilewater, that place can go rot in despair. Well, is it an insult if it's already rotten? That place can go clean in despair. One more thing though. It doesn't solve the problem, but there's a secret third choice. Give up temporarily. Take a break. Sounds cliche, I know, but there were several bosses I got stuck on for hours, and after taking a break, I came back and beat the boss in minutes. No guarantee it'll work for you, but some fresh air, a nap, a snack, might just be the thing you need. Thanks for watching. Funny thing, I'm actually more frustrated by the bosses that were too easy. Some of those bosses were so fun, and then they just died. Dang.